Now, the United Nations Development Programme in South Africa, in partnership with the UN Women and National Community Radio Forum, are launching a national campaign aimed at raising awareness on issues of bystanderism. The topics being discussed include the role of bystanders in gender-based emotional violence, femicide, disputed and denied pregnancies, and other related topics. For more on this, I'm joined now by Gender and HIV Programme Officer at the United Nations Development Programme, Nelly Mary Mwaka. Nelly, good evening, and thank you very much for your time tonight on the Newsfeed Late Night. Talk to us about what the conversations are going to be about and why these conversations are important, particularly with the kind of scourge we have been seeing in South Africa, but also during this time of 16 days of activism against women and child abuse.
Thank you very much, Thabo, for having me. These conversations are important because we want to focus our attention on gender-based violence prevention on the bystander. And the bystander is you and me, a neighbor, a colleague, a stranger. Anybody can play an active role in preventing gender-based violence. So we want to have a discussion with the nation and to create awareness about the role that everyone can play to prevent gender-based violence. Now, we know that in most cases we have focused on the survivor, we have focused on the perpetrator, we have focused on laws and policies, we have focused on institutions, but we have never closely interrogated the role that a bystander can play. So this will be a sensitization campaign, and it will be looking inwards instead of looking outwards of what everybody can contribute to prevention of gender-based violence.
Yeah. Now, I know you'll be discussing, of course, in terms of tips and strategies, but overall, what is at the core of your belief as the UN Development Programme that what are bystanders or active bystanders actually able to do before, during, and even after an incident of gender-based violence?
Yes, bystanders can play a big role. For example, before, we can observe that something is going on and we can take some action. For example, we can offer emotional support by just talking to the person and listening to the person who is affected, or we can refer that person to referral services, for example, a counselor. For example, it may be a women's shelter, it may be the police. And I think as bystanders, we need to have these numbers ready on our phones so that we can assist before. Now, during the event when violence is perpetrated, this is a difficult situation, and we are not asking people to physically intervene because they may put their lives at risk. But we are asking that maybe you can run and alert somebody, you can call the police, you can, for example, go into a shop and ask for help. So there is much that we can do during the event, and we don't really have to put our lives at risk. Now, after the event, I think the survivor just needs to be reassured. They need to receive further help or counseling, and they need to be assured that they are not the ones in the wrong. And so they need to be assisted. For example, they might be taken to a shelter where they can be able to think out their lives well. There is further counseling, maybe from the church or from the psychologist, but also just from the neighbors, a colleague, to ensure that the survivor is coping after that event.
Now, let's talk about the factors that influence bystanderism. It's a phenomenon whereby, an individual or people might not act because they are inhibited by, for example, a diffusion of responsibility. If you're the only one there, you almost have to take 100% responsibility. People are more likely to act when there is maybe a group, because at least you'll take part responsibility. How much of that plays a role in people actually not acting when they see instances of abuse?
Thank you very much. Yes, we did a study. We looked at the barriers that prevent people from acting, and one of the barriers was prevailing gender norms on people actually thinking that this is a private matter and there's nothing they can do. Another factor was helplessness, people thinking that when they go to the police never do anything anyway. Another barrier was lack of information. People really didn't know where to go for help or where to refer the survivors for help. So this is why we are carrying out this campaign to send out this information. And what we also did was that we had positive messages to counter those barriers. For example, if somebody believes that there is something that they can do, they will actually look around and see what they can do. And for example, if somebody is looking helpless, we countered it with a message to say that if I don't do something, something might get worse. So normally, if you are alone, it's to look around at what resources may be available. Is there a police station nearby? Is there a petrol station nearby where you can raise an alarm? Are there security guards around that can be able to come and help? So it's really just being aware of what is around you and see if you can take any action. If not, what I'm insisting is that we need to have those numbers on our phones. Then you can actually call one of those numbers that will seek for help.
I mean, how much of this, for example, in the question of pregnancies that are being disputed, is played on by our cultural dispositions? And I understand you say, well, people maybe might lack information. Other people might really have information, but culturally, in a context of culture, somebody might be sitting in the room, they can see and know what is happening, but not act because they are bound by their cultural disposition. How much are you interrogating that and getting information on that?
Yes, we are interrogating cultural practices. We are interrogating gender norms and discussing them to getting help. And we are countering these perceptions that are out there that, for example, gender-based violence is a private matter and I can't do anything about it. So we discuss how gender norms are a barrier, and right now we may not have answers, but we this to the communities, to the radio stations, for people to discuss, come up with solutions on how gender norms we can be able to address them to address gender-based violence. But in the study that I was talking about, when people actually are sensitized and they are aware and they know that, for example, gender-based violence is not a private matter and it can actually lead to death. When somebody believes that, they are able to take action. So we would like to shift people's perception on gender-based violence, especially that based on gender norms, to bring around some change.
Yeah. I mean, in South Africa, we are having tougher conversations, especially around race and how race plays a role in various aspects of things. Does race play a role in bystanderism, where a victim is likely to receive help from same race observer than they would from somebody maybe of a different race?
Repeat your question again.
Is a victim likely to receive help from a same race observer than they are likely to receive help from an observer of a different race?
Well, so you're bringing it in as a racial issue.
Yes.
Yes. I think we want to discourage that and just let everybody see themselves as a bystander who can be active in preventing GBV. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter who you need to help. But what is at risk is a life. So again, this is what we would like to address and just let everybody know that they are a bystander in spite of their race, in spite of where they come from, and that they can be able to save a life.
Nelly, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Nelly Mary Mwaka, Gender and HIV Programme Officer at the United Nations Development Programme.